Stunned by a harsh reality, a mother discovered 10,000 left by a kind CEO at the store counter. Mary Johnson stood at the edge of the grocery store aisle, her breath shallow. With 2 kids pulling on her sleeves, their sweet chatter felt like it belonged in another universe. The reality of her life weighed heavily on her, compounded by her mother's cancer diagnosis and the spiraling medical bills that had come along with it. Today, the pantry echoed her despair empty. The choices seemed stark. She could choose between healthy meals for her children or the health treatments her mother desperately needed. Overwhelmed, she tangled her fingers in her dark hair, fighting against tears. She was stunned by her reality. Navigating aisles filled with abundance, she felt invisible amidst the laughter of other parents. Items she wished for slid tantalizingly into her line of sight: a glistening pack of strawberries, baby shampoo, and the newest toy her kids had insisted on. Each grocery run screamed of her insufficiency, a reminder of the long hours at the hospital that kept her away from their laughter. With a sigh heavy enough to match her burdens, she focused on her list, vaguely aware of time slipping through her fingers. Suddenly, amid the fluorescent lights, she noticed a crumpled envelope peeking from beneath the checkout counter. Curiosity overtook her cautious instincts. She bent down, and her heart raced as she unfolded the envelope. 10,000 in cash sat within. Her immediate thought was a blend of surprise and hope. This money could change everything. It could secure treatment for her mother, ease the tightening grip of financial strain, bring a smile back to her face, and provide for her children in ways she hadn't dared to dream. Yet beneath the glimmer of hope, a torrent of guilt threatened to drown her. Just as quickly as the euphoria surged, dread curled around her thoughts. This money didn't belong to her. It belonged to the local CEO, known recently for his generous initiatives. She could picture him, well-spoken, confident, yet enigmatic, a spirit of goodwill thrown into the pressures of a community in need. But how would it feel to take that kindness, to brush aside the ethical implications for her family's survival? Her pulse quickened with every tick of the clock, her mother's deepening illness weighing on her. A reminder that time was spiraling like a cruel joke. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As desperation simmered, Mary felt caught in a web of decision-making. She glimpsed at the checkout line filled with cheerful families, contrasting sharply with her isolation, each one oblivious to the shadows looming behind her thinly veiled smile. What if she returned the money? What if she took it? Each possibility toyed with her sense of self, pushing her thoughts into darker alleys. The mere thought of her mother's fragility fed her sense of urgency. A choice had to be made, and soon. A figure approached the store, confident strides and an air of authority embodied by the sight of the CEO himself, caught in animated conversation with someone at the entrance. Time stopped momentarily. The envelope slipped from her fingers, her body stiffened, and she wrestled with a dreading realization. This wasn't just about her mother's life. It was about who she was becoming and what choices defined her essence. Guilt and fear intertwined with her need for salvation as she stood frozen, waiting for the balance between right and wrong to tip only one way this could go. Yet so many unanswered questions hung in the air. Would she step forward or remain in the shadows of her struggle? Her fate hung perilously at that threshold, the echo of impending change looming just out of reach. As Mary stood paralyzed before the checkout, the weight of the envelope, an embodiment of hope and guilt, seemed to press down on her shoulders more than ever. The cheerful banter of children and the rustling of shopping bags felt like an echo from a distant world, one to which she no longer belonged. It was a world filled with unblemished joy, contrasting sharply with the storm raging inside her. Glancing back at the CEO, his laughter infusing the air with a sense of ease she couldn't afford, the decision spiraled like a dervish in her mind. Return the money? Was that possible? Could she really walk back into that world of civility, of rights and wrongs, when the weight of her reality laid squarely on her? Or stake a claim on destiny finally in her grasp and risk losing everything she held dear in an avalanche of moral decay? A pang of anger surged within her at the injustice of it all. Why should kindness feel like a burden? She had worked hard, juggled 2 jobs, and stretched every dollar to the limit. Yet here she was, staring at a lifeline wrapped in an ethical conundrum. She wanted to reach out, to grasp it tightly, but it felt slippery, slipping from her hands like sand. Her children's whispers softened to a subtle murmur, pleading for attention. She drew in a deep breath, focusing on their innocent faces. Their needs echoed fiercely in her heart nights with sweet dreams and brave smiles, yet they also amplified her internal struggle. They deserved a mother unbroken by despair, a woman who could confront the world head-on. Mary took a step back. The tension within her released just enough for a moment of clarity. How many times had she put others before her own desires? How many times had she said no to her own needs to tend to her family's? This was not just about her mother's health or a moment of weakness. It was about asserting her own strength in a way that reflected her true self. Across the aisle, the store manager noticed Mary's turmoil and approached her cautiously. With concern in his eyes, he asked if everything was all right. The kindness in his tone struck a chord as another thought crashed over her like a wave. Perhaps she could confront the CEO directly. Perhaps there was a way to speak to him about the plight of ordinary people like her, to address the need for change, not through desperation, but through dialogue and transparency. Collecting herself, Mary made a decision. The envelope, beautiful as it was, would be returned. But returning it was not a passive choice. It would serve as the catalyst for a more significant conversation, the opportunity to champion others in need alongside her own. She straightened up, steely determination blossoming within her chest as she shifted her gaze to the entrance, watching the figures still engaged in their light-hearted conversation. She needed to believe her voice mattered, that one woman's struggle could spark a broader change. As she steeled herself, making her way towards the CEO, a familiar sense of urgency returned. This was a fresh start, an act of bravery overlaying the weight of her current burden. It was time to test her ability to advocate for herself and others despite the pressure pulling her backwards. With the determination glinting in her eyes, she stepped forward, ready to face not just a wealthy CEO, but the shadows of doubt and fear that had haunted her for too long. What would come of this confrontation? Would she find in him a partner for her cause or lose herself entirely in a moment of vulnerability? Mary approached the CEO, her heart pounding rhythmically, a clang of uncertainty and resolve echoing in her mind. Each step felt heavier yet somehow lighter, as if she was shedding layers of herself that no longer served a purpose. The laughter and chatter of shoppers faded into a low murmur, a background score to her intensified thoughts. This was the moment where her fears could either stifle or elevate her spirit. As she drew closer, she took note of the CEO, a figure of success wrapped in sharp suits and confident ease, the embodiment of every aspiration and disappointment that had haunted her for years. Her throat tightened and, for a brief agonizing moment, she wished she hadn't committed to this course. But there was no turning back. This decision was not just about the money. It was about reclaiming her voice amid the chaos of her life. It was a risk, but one she felt she had to take. "Excuse me, sir," she began, her voice steady but undeniably soft. He turned to her, his expression shifting from amusement to genuine curiosity, as though her presence had pierced through the bubble of his comfort. "I'm sorry, but I need to return this," she continued, holding out the envelope, its glossy exterior reflecting the overhead lights. The CO's brow furrowed slightly as he realized the package in her hand contained not just currency, but a significant weight of her moral judgment. "Why would you return a gift meant to help?" he questioned, his tone now tinged with a blend of surprise and concern. She could sense a gap opening up between their worlds, illuminated by the starkness of their realities. Mary felt her conviction swell within her. "Because it's not just money. It's a reminder of a world I'm trying to navigate where circumstances can overshadow my choices but shouldn't define me. I have my own struggles, and while I appreciate your kindness, I can't accept charity. The words spilled out, raw and tremulous, but liberating all the same. The CEO regarded her with a thoughtful expression, his initial exuberance extinguished by a flicker of understanding. Outside their exchange, shoppers continued about their lives, blissfully unaware of the critical juncture unfolding just a few feet away. I think you misunderstand me, he replied, his voice now measured. This was meant as support, not charity. You're not alone in this struggle. The sting of his words ignited something deep within her. However, she pressed on. Support does not come at the cost of my dignity. I've worked hard for every penny I have. My children need a mother who stands tall, not one who leans on others. His gaze softened, surprise giving way to contemplation. Perhaps we can look beyond the envelope then. What if we talk about what you need, what solutions you envision? You have the potential to be more than a recipient of kindness. Mary's heart raced again. Was he suggesting what she suspected? The notion danced tantalizingly close yet felt so precariously distant. Solutions, she echoed, allowing the word to nestle in her mind. Could this moment evolve from accepting a handout to building something together? As she stood there, grasping the chance to redefine their interaction, a flicker of hope ignited within her, an ember that signaled not just resilience, but the possibility that she could be an advocate for herself, her children, and others like her. However, beneath this burgeoning excitement lay lingering doubt. Would she be able to articulate the realities of her life effectively? Could she challenge the status quo without losing herself again? Taking a deep breath, she straightened her spine, fueled by this newfound recognition of her agency. It was time to transcend the rescue narrative and step into a role that empowered not only herself but also those who felt trapped in their circumstances. She barely noticed the familiar faces around her, each blurring into the background as she weighed the significance of this pivotal moment. A tremor of fear coiled tightly around her heart, yet alongside it was a pulse of determination echoing. Louder. Let's talk, she said, holding his gaze. And I mean really talk, about how we can change things for people like me. As the CEO nodded, encouraging her to continue, Mary felt the threshold of possibility crack open, urging her forward into uncharted territory. What would this dialogue unfold? Would it lead to the influence she sought, or would fear creep back in, just as it had always done? Mary stood poised, her mind racing as the CEO's penetrating gaze seemed to strip away her defenses. This was no longer just about a financial transaction. It was a crossroads where her ambitions and anxieties collided, shaping a narrative she barely comprehended, yet was eager to explore. The air was thick with potential, and she felt her throat tighten again, not from fear but from the weight of possibility. Speaking up is where it starts, she thought. But how do I articulate the complexities of my struggle? How do I transform this moment into something meaningful? That's the heart of it, isn't it? She began, embracing the responsibility of her voice. What I envision isn't merely a lifeline. It's a path to self-sufficiency. I want to influence how we approach those facing similar situations, not just for myself, but for others battling unseen challenges. She saw the flicker of interest morph into a spark of inspiration within the CEO's eyes. Here's a thought, he proposed, adjusting his posture as though readying himself for a partnership. Why don't we think about fostering initiatives that empower women like you? Instances where your first-hand experience can inform actionable plans to uplift others. A rush of emotion surged through Mary. Was he suggesting collaboration, a chance to construct something substantive from her trials? The excitement collided with doubt, compelling her to question her ability to transform this momentum into measurable action. Could I actually spearhead initiatives? She pondered silently. Am I equipped to do it? Who would even listen? Just as these doubts crested, a subtle tenacity emerged within her. Yes, I can, she declared inwardly, finding solace in the realization that her lived experience held value. Women need their stories told. Barriers should give way to dialogues. The CEO nodded knowingly, his fingertips steepled thoughtfully. The voice of experience has a unique power. You know what resonates, what works, and what fails. I can connect you with resources, mentors, and networks that could amplify your message. How does that sound? A thrill rippled through her, awakening aspirations long buried beneath layers of self-sabotage and fear. This could be the turning point, a chance to replace her self-dismissal with a purpose-driven narrative. It sounds incredible, Mary replied, her words laced with an authenticity she hadn't felt in years. But I must warn you, this won't be an easy ride. I may stumble. I may even fall. Falling is just part of the journey, he assured, his tone warm yet serious. Resilience comes from facing those challenges head-on. And you're clearly resilient. Let's work together to build something lasting. Mary couldn't remember the last time someone had offered such an opportunity. It was exhilarating yet terrifying. What if I let myself be vulnerable? What if I risk exposure? She questioned silently, wrestling with the lingering grip of insecurity. But then she envisioned other women like her, their struggles washing over her in a wave. If I can help even one, that's worth every ounce of discomfort. All right then, she affirmed. Let's set up a meeting, document exactly what we need to get started. As they exchanged ideas in eager rhythm, brainstorming elements like community workshops and outreach programs, a warmth spread through her. Ideas flowed more freely, weaving into a tapestry of hope where tangible change could emerge. Yet, beneath the excitement simmered the doubt, always assessing, always critiquing. Just then, a siren raced past outside, a chaotic reminder of the world spinning relentlessly forward, indifferent to her inner turmoil. Everything felt surreal, the laughter of bystanders, the scent of cinnamon buns wafting from a nearby stall, yet all she could focus on was the conversation deepening with every moment. Are you ready for this? She asked herself internally, the stakes mounting as clarity dawned. Am I prepared to not only advocate for myself but also be the voice of many? Rearranging her priorities felt daunting, but this was the first time she entertained the concept of broadening her impact. Would she succeed, or would that swift current of self-doubt threaten to sweep her away? The COS voice broke through her reverie. Let's take the first step tomorrow. I want you to bring your ideas, your passion. Tomorrow, she repeated, feeling the weight of the task already pressing down. What if tomorrow unlocks everything I've always wanted? And with that thought, she realized the next day would be not just an appointment lined with potential, but a signal of her commitment to change. But what if tomorrow, in her pursuit to transform, she confronted a reality she wasn't ready to face? Mary's thoughts raced as she entered her apartment, the day's events replaying in her mind. Tomorrow was supposed to be a fresh start, a leap toward transformation. But what lay behind that possibility? Fear rippled through her, intertwining with anticipation. She placed her bag down and sank into the worn-out couch, the fabric embracing her like an old friend. Yet even the familiarity of her surroundings couldn't quell the surge of uncertainty that loomed over her. What if I disappoint him? What if I fail to inspire anyone? These questions haunted her, gnawing at her resolve like a persistent shadow. In a bid to quell her worry, Mary pulled out a notebook and flipped to the first blank page. Let's get it out, she encouraged herself, the pen poised between her fingers. She began jotting down her ideas: workshops, mentorship programs, outreach efforts, but each stroke of the pen felt like a reminder of the chasm between her vision and her capabilities. She paused, a deep breath punctuating the silence. What are you afraid of? She confronted herself. It was moments like these that revealed her vulnerabilities. It wasn't merely the fear of failure but a deeper fear of exposure, of unearthing the secrets she'd buried too long. Your experience matters, she whispered, almost as a mantra. But the doubt was relentless. What if her story wasn't compelling enough? What if the retelling of her struggles opened wounds that would never heal? Taking a moment, she closed her eyes and envisioned a gathering women from different backgrounds, eager to share and connect. But then doubt seeped in. They won't see me as a leader. I'm just another participant trying to manage my chaos. Determined to push through, she wrote down what made her story unique: the journey from pain to resilience, the moments that changed her, and the lessons learned. Each word solidified her narrative, shaping it into something tangible rather than the abstract fears that had previously consumed her. This was hers to share, her truth that could resonate well beyond the pages of her notebook. As the hours slipped away, the lines on the page began to form a pathway, one not just for herself but for others to tread. Maybe I can amplify their voices. An idea flickered in her mind, igniting an ember of hope. I don't have to be perfect. I only need to be authentic. Yet, just as clarity dawned, paranoia crept in again. The very thought of presenting her findings felt monumental. What if they reject my ideas? What if no one believes in a stranger? Each what if conjured images of her standing in front of a room, the weight of judgment pressing down on her. Suddenly, the silence was broken by her phone buzzing. She glanced at the screen, an email notification from the CEO. Her heart raced. The anticipation was unbearable. She opened the message, the subject line staring back. Looking forward to tomorrow. A simple phrase, yet it held the gravity of possibility, which both exhilarated and terrified her. Am I ready for this? She questioned, her heart thrumming as she reached for another piece of paper. What is it I fear most? The failure to inspire, or the abandonment of my own story? She fought the urge to shut down and rather began crafting an opening statement, determined to redefine the narrative not just for herself but for those waiting in the wings. It was a risk, a glaring vulnerability she hadn't dared face before. As she wrote, a fresh wave of determination surged within her. Maybe tomorrow isn't just about presenting ideas. It's about reclaiming the power of my experience. Yet, as she leaned into her intent, another thought intruded. What if I reveal too much? What if my vulnerabilities become ammunition for scrutiny? The fear gripped her once more. Would she truly be able to confront the vulnerabilities this new path would demand of her? With the clock ticking closer to the next day, anticipation mixed with dread solidified into a decision. She would embrace her story, the flaws and all, and let it be heard. But as the day faded into night, an unsettling sense lingered, the realization that courage came with a price, and the path ahead would demand everything she thought she knew about herself. What if, during her desire for transformation, she unearthed secrets that could unravel her journey entirely? Mary awoke to the muted light filtering through her curtains, its softness contrasting sharply with the tempest of emotions swirling within her. Today wasn't just another day. It felt monumental. Each heartbeat thudded in her ears, a stark reminder that she was on the precipice of a personal revelation. It was time to face the very worries that had plagued her the night before. She rose, shedding the remnants of sleep. As she prepared for the day, Mary's mind was a battlefield. On one side, a voice clamored for her to retreat sturdy and familiar. What if it doesn't go as planned? What if everyone realizes you're just an imposter? The other voice, quieter but unyielding, countered. You can't inspire others if you don't show up as your true self. Her breakfast was a blur. The taste of coffee laced with apprehension lingered for just a moment before fading into the background noise of her thoughts. She dressed deliberately, the act almost meditative. Each piece of clothing was more than fabric. They were armor, a preparation for vulnerability. As the final touches were applied, lipstick, a few curls in her hair, she caught her reflection. The woman staring back was not just a survivor but a harbinger of change. After a deep breath that filled her with a semblance of calm, Mary stepped outside. The crisp air wrapped around her like a comforting blanket, but the world felt alive with possibility. Every sidewalk crack, every chirp of a bird, every distant hum of traffic whispered the same theme. Today was different. It was the morning of discovery. Upon arriving at the office, the familiar faces appeared, some engaged in spirited conversations, others lost in their own musings. While greeting colleagues, Mary felt small flickers of encouragement raise her confidence. This isn't just about you, Mary, she reminded herself. It's about making a dent in the lives of those who need it. She settled into her desk, pen and notebook at the ready. Each idea she had penned down yesterday now felt like stepping stones. The purpose behind every workshop and mentorship resonated with clarity. There were various difficulties she had faced that echoed within her, and recognizing this made her story not just her own. It was part of a collective narrative, reflecting the struggles and triumphs of many. The time to present approached, and her heart pounded like a drum in a slow march. As she made her way to the conference room, she felt a rise in both excitement and dread. Breathe, she chastised herself, her inner speaker becoming more robust. This isn't about them judging you. It's about sharing your truth. As she entered, Mary was met with a sea of expectant faces. The room fell silent. It felt almost ceremonial. She stood before them, her heart racing fiercely against the backdrop of vulnerability she was about to navigate. "Thank you all for this opportunity," she began, her voice steadying as she embraced the warmth of the gathered energy. As she spoke, the confidence she felt in herself began to replace the fear the words flowed, crafted with her own experiences. She cited her struggles, highlighted her resilience, and spoke of her aspirations for the future like an artist painting a vivid mural. She could feel the connection building with her audience, and yet, a question hovered over her. What if she dug too deep? What if her words unearthed more than she intended? Midway through, her eyes flickered to the expressions of her colleagues, some nodding in empathy, others intrigued. Mid-presentation, she paused, internally battling the rawness that stirred within her. Here is where I might falter, she thought, but here is also where I grow. In a moment of clarity, Mary took a breath and addressed the reality. I stand before you not as someone who has overcome, but as someone still navigating the complexities of my experience. And that's okay. Something shifted. She could feel the weight of her own honesty lifting not only from her chest but seeping into the spaces between them. That as she finished, a wave of relief washed over her. The room erupted in applause, but more impactful was the shared glimmer of hope reflected in their eyes. Perhaps her journey, laden with scars, offered a new perspective, a way to connect, heal, and learn together. Yet, as she walked off the stage amidst their cheers, a seed of doubt began to burrow in the back of her mind. What if this connection came with an unanticipated cost? What if her honesty shattered the walls she had so carefully built? Suddenly, that familiar anxiety reared its head again, whispering that while she had embraced her story, she was now exposed in ways she could never prepare for. She had cracked open the door. The question loomed: what lay beyond it? The applause still echoed in her ears, a tumultuous wave that clashed with the quieter storm brewing in her heart. Mary returned to her desk, her mind torn between euphoria and unease. Colleagues approached her, complimenting her presentation, sharing their own stories, and expressing how her authenticity encouraged them to reconsider their struggles. Yet, beneath their praise lay an undercurrent of apprehension swirling in her thoughts. Had she truly opened a door she was ready to walk through, or had she merely cracked it just enough to allow her fears to spill out? As the day progressed, the comforting familiarity of her workspace felt increasingly isolating. The very same desk that had been a refuge was transforming into a stage where every keystroke felt scrutinized. Mary couldn't shake the feeling that her moment of vulnerability had reshuffled the dynamics between her and her colleagues. Could she be both their confidant and a peer? The lines blurred in an uncomfortable dance of professionalism and personal connection. In the late afternoon, Mary received a message from her manager, Melissa, requesting a private meeting. Anxiety tightened its grip as she replayed the presentation in her mind, searching for missteps or misplaced words. What if she thinks I've overstepped? Mary mused, her pulse quickening. The minutes lingered as she awaited her fate, a clock ticking off the seconds of self-doubt. When she entered the conference room, the atmosphere felt thick with discernment. Melissa's friendly smile offered a brief reprieve, but the weight behind her eyes hinted at deeper concerns. Mary, Melissa began, her voice steady and calm, I wanted to talk about your presentation. You tackled some sensitive topics, and while I admire your courage, it's vital we navigate this carefully moving forward. Mary's heart sank. Isn't that the point? To connect authentically? She nearly blurted but caught herself just in time. Instead, she took a shallow breath. I believe sharing my journey can help foster a more open dialogue. Melissa nodded thoughtfully. That's true, but there's a risk. Vulnerability can inspire, but it can also expose you to criticism. Some may not be as receptive, and I'm concerned about how this may play out in team dynamics. Not everyone processes their struggles the same way. Mary felt the sting of truth in those words. So, you think I should dial it back? The question escaped her lips with a hint of bitterness, but she forced herself to soften. I want to maintain that authenticity, while also being part of a cohesive team. Exactly, Melissa replied. Find a way to share without sacrificing your core. Maybe think of it as offering insight rather than full disclosure. The conversation shifted her perspective, igniting a swirl of reflections about authenticity and professional boundaries. What did it mean to be real while still fitting into the corporate mold? Was she doing a disservice to herself and her colleagues by not guarding specific aspects of her journey? In prioritizing connection, had she risked too much? Days turned into weeks. The cycle of presentations and team meetings continued, punctuated by moments where Mary felt herself holding back, censoring parts of her truth to maintain harmony. Yet, in her private hours, those suppressed aspects clawed at her consciousness, asking to be released. She started journaling, daily reflecting on the blurred boundaries of openness within her professional life. Each entry felt like both a catharsis and a chain, liberating her emotions while binding her tighter to the same fears she had initially battled against. Sitting on her balcony one evening, watching the stars emerge against a velvet sky, realizations dawned like the faint glimmer of light on the horizon. Vulnerability didn't have to mean exposure. Sharing her truth could take many forms. If she wanted to lead, to inspire, she needed to navigate honesty with strategy. Yet, a nagging thought lingered: if she chose to rein in her authenticity, what would she lose in the process? Would the warmth of connection turn cold, with her essence diluted by conformity? The struggle to reconcile her desire for genuine outreach with the realities of professional expectations waged within her. As Mary contemplated her path forward, she received a surprise holiday card in the office, hand-signed by her team, expressing how much they valued her courage. In that moment, clarity ignited anew. Perhaps she hadn't poisoned the well after all. The connection she sought was both a pursuit and a challenge, a promise of profound growth awaiting her acceptance. Now, the next big presentation loomed. Would she harness her reflections to share deeper truths while heeding Melissa's counsel? Or would she retreat again, shy away from another journey of exposed vulnerability? The stakes felt higher than ever. Decisions now held the potential to reshape not only her career, but also her inner landscape. With a determined breath, Mary made a choice. As the meeting approached, she resolved to stand at the precipice once more. What would she unveil this time? The question danced tantalizingly at the edge of her thoughts, alive with the prospect of what lay ahead. Mary spent the days leading up to her next big presentation wrestling with swirling thoughts, her mind a tempest of anxieties and revelations. Each evening, she found herself at her desk, the glow of her laptop illuminating her increasingly crumpled plans, breaking down the message she wished to convey. She grappled with the desire to maintain her authenticity, while Melissa's warning replayed in her psyche like a dissonant chord. Vulnerability, she mused, was a potent weapon with the potential for great good, but it could also cut deeply. The feedback from her team had given her a sense of validation, yet doubts lingered: could she risk perceived professionalism for the sake of personal insight? As the day of the presentation arrived, Mary stood before the mirror, adjusting her blouse and trying to calm her racing heart. In the end, the reflection staring back at her was a blend of determination and unease. She took a deep breath, collecting her thoughts. The conference room buzzed with anticipatory energy as colleagues trickled in, their faces a mix of eagerness and trepidation. Mary had considered using this opportunity to explore themes of resilience and growth, but she scarcely felt like an expert. What if she faltered? What if they saw her as an imposter? As the minutes passed, she reviewed her notes, verifying each point until they blurred together, a tangled mess of ideas and apprehensions. Just before it was time to start, she closed her eyes, summoning the memories of her team's encouragement. She envisioned herself not solely as a presenter but as a guide, tasked with facilitating a discussion that could lead to shared growth and understanding. When she stepped in front of her colleagues, her stance remained firm, the weight of their eyes momentarily grounding her. She began, cautiously at first, weaving her narrative of transformation and reflection, threading it with anecdotes that illustrated the power of communal strength. The tension loosened its grip on her as she observed subtle nods and smiles. Halfway through, she saw a familiar face in the crowd: David, a colleague whose silence often contrasted her newfound courage. His engagement ignited something deep within her, and in that moment, she decided to reveal more than she had initially planned. Stepping further into vulnerability, she spoke honestly about her struggles and triumphs, weaving together connections that transcended the borders of their professional personas. As the presentation unfolded, something remarkable occurred. Colleagues began to open up, sharing their own stories of hardship and perseverance. Laughter occasionally punctuated the atmosphere, as did moments of empathetic silence. It was no longer just Mary's journey. It became a mosaic of experiences that resonated on multiple levels. Yet, even as this shared connection blossomed, a whisper of fear lingered in her thoughts. Was she treading too far into the personal realm? Would the discussions spark an unintended backlash later? The presentation drew to a close, and as applause erupted around her, Mary stood momentarily frozen. This time, it wasn't merely about self-expression. It was also about the sacred trust that had been fostered in that room. Later, as Mary absently gathered her materials, Melissa approached with a contemplative expression. "That was powerful, Mary, a real shift compared to the last. But let us talk about the next steps and how we can channel this momentum positively." Her heart raced anew. The conversation would determine much of her future trajectory. Would they delve into the potential of creating a safe space for dialogue, or would the concerns about boundaries restrict what had started to unfold? As they settled into the next discussion, Mary couldn't shake the imminent weight of their next conversation. She felt the ground beneath her shifting once more. Would she have the courage to advocate for the dynamics they had begun to build, or would she retreat into the shadows of caution? With every word exchanged, the stakes mounted. Mary knew the time had come to confront the real implications of her choices. Would she step forward to champion this newfound connection, or silently uphold the status quo? The moment of truth hovered in the air, crackling with anticipation and uncertainty. Mary took a moment to collect herself, the echo of applause still reverberating in her mind. This was not simply a presentation, it was a tipping point, a pivotal moment marking her journey toward authenticity in a world that often valued polished facades over heartfelt narratives. She glanced at Melissa, who now leaned in with a focused intensity, eyes reflecting both curiosity and concern. "What do you think of steering this into a team initiative?" Melissa suggested, her voice a blend of excitement and caution. "Could be a great opportunity to foster more discussion. Build on what you started." The suggestion, both tempting and terrifying, made Mary's stomach churn. "You mean like facilitating regular team sharing sessions? Are people really open to that?" The vulnerability she had unveiled felt like skin shed, raw and unexpected. The idea of making it a structured initiative pushed her sense of exposure to an uncomfortable edge. "Absolutely. You've created an environment that encourages sharing. We wouldn't be capitalizing on vulnerabilities. We'd be nurturing them," Melissa said, her tone steady. "You can lead that." Mary's mind raced. Lead? The word reverberated as a challenge and a glowing opportunity. She envisioned gathering her colleagues, perhaps even David, sharing not just the burdens of work, but the real complexities of life. Would this be a step toward authentic leadership? Yet lurking beneath was a nagging sense of self-doubt. How could she be a guiding light when she still wrestled with her insecurities? What if they're not as open as I was? She hesitated, picturing moments when silence had settled in over tough topics, when honesty had been chased away by discomfort. "I can't handle the disappointment if it doesn't go well." Melissa placed a reassuring hand on her arm, grounding Mary's spiraling thoughts. "You're already creating a shift. Their openness is a reflection of your bravery. We've reached a place where individuals feel safe. We can't take that for granted. Share the space? Embrace the potential vulnerability of leading others toward self-disclosure." Mary felt the weight of her choices intensifying. She had taken a monumental leap during the presentation, But that singular act of courage had pulled back layers of collective experience that now lay on her shoulders. Okay, but what if, she began, her voice wobbling slightly, what if I reveal something and it's not received well? What if I can't manage the fallout? The thought hung heavily between them, filled with a dread she couldn't shake. Melissa's gaze softened. That fear? It's valid. But when we show ourselves, we create pathways for others to do the same. There's real power in that. Mary inhaled deeply, grounding herself in the truth of Melissa's words. But the anxiety remained tangled within her. Could she navigate the minefield of emotions and vulnerabilities? Could she let go of the protective shell built over years? Picturing a circle of colleagues engaged in raw dialogue, opening up their fears and failures alongside her own, had her stomach in knots. They might sit empty, comparing hollow statements, mirroring her own instinct to hide behind professionalism. No backing down now, she muttered under her breath, a mantra of sorts. The concept of pioneering this movement filled her with an electricity that was equal parts anxiety and exhilaration. It was time to lean into that fear instead of retreating. Let us do it, she finally declared, a flicker of resolve igniting in her chest. But I'll need your support. This is going to be a challenge. Absolutely, Melissa smiled, a spark of enthusiasm in her eyes. We're in this together. As the weight of commitment settled firmly on her shoulders, Mary felt a shift inside, a raw acknowledgement that stepping into vulnerability was a path towards real growth, both personally and professionally. The question remained, though, in championing this initiative, would she address the deepest fears residing within her, risking everything for true connection? As they finalized the details of the new initiative, Mary knew a confrontation loomed ahead, one that would test how far she was willing to journey into her own emotional landscape. She gathered her notes, her earlier apprehension ebbing, replaced by a stirring uncertainty about the uncharted territory waiting beyond the threshold of her comfort zone. What lurked in the depths of her own vulnerabilities would soon beckon her to surface in ways she hadn't anticipated. Would she emerge stronger, or discover an even darker corner of her psyche hidden beneath the guise of openness? The possibility sent tremors through her. The room was filled with an electric energy, anticipation vibrating on the surface as Mary Johnson prepared for what could be a defining moment in her career. It had been a few weeks since she decided to lead the initiative on vulnerability and openness within her team, a courageous leap into an uncharted territory that lay between personal truth and professional decorum. As her colleagues settled in, Mary felt the familiar pang of anxiety mixed with the thrill of purpose thumping in tandem within her. Today, they would collectively unpack the weight of their experiences, inspired by her journey towards self-advocacy. This wasn't merely a presentation. It was a critical conduit that could foster meaningful connection, or should they not engage with the same fervor silence. Taking a deep breath, she scanned the room, anchoring herself in the supportive faces she had come to recognize as her newfound allies. She had spent days meticulously crafting an agenda that encouraged engagement. She envisioned them as a tapestry, each voice a necessary thread contributing to the overall picture of resilience. Thank you for joining me today, she began, emotion threading through her voice. The anticipation hung palpably in the air. This isn't just about me sharing my story. It's about us sharing our lives, connecting through our struggles, and celebrating our victories. It's time to foster an environment where we can be authentic and courageous together. As she spoke, Mary's heart raced. She could feel her preemptive doubts whispering, probing at the edges of her confidence. What if they don't open up? What if they judge? But she pushed through, the courage of her convictions guiding her. With each segment, she encouraged her colleagues to reflect on their own barriers, what held them back from sharing their truths, which stories lie dormant beneath the layers of professionalism, waiting to be released. She prodded gently. That pivotal moment arrived when David, the quiet colleague, raised his hand. I always thought sharing too much was unprofessional, he admitted, his voice barely rising above a whisper. But it's liberating to hear someone speak candidly. I envy the strength it takes. The words hung heavy in the air, but relief washed over Mary. Her colleagues were beginning to unravel their concerns, understanding the profound connection that came from vulnerability. Encouraged, a spirited dialogue ignited. Laughter intermingled with warmth as more people began to share. Stories spilled forth like a cascade, a chorus of voices harmonizing in the celebration of shared experiences. Each revelation deepened their bond, threading them together in a new narrative of unity against past isolation. Yet Mary remained acutely aware of the delicate balance they were treading, vulnerability paired with proportional openness, a safe space stitched together through trust. The echo of Melissa's early caution about navigating sensitivity loomed in the back of her mind, but she pushed it aside to focus on the growth emerging in front of her. As the session concluded, Mary felt an electrifying sense of achievement reverberating through her. The applause from her colleagues was not just about the success of the meeting. It was validation of the collective journey they had embarked upon. With the room filled with renewed energy, Mary knew they were now stepping into a realm that transcended mere strategy. They were forging relationships that could withstand the pressures of professional life. "Let us keep this going," she declared, adrenaline surging within her. "Let us establish regular sessions. This becomes a cornerstone of our work culture." The response was thunderous, filled with notes of eagerness and agreement. In that moment, Mary recognized the transformation not only in herself but in her colleagues as well. They were no longer merely co-workers. They were a community bonded by shared understanding and fortitude. In the weeks that followed, Mary continued to facilitate these dialogues, attending each meeting with a strengthened sense of self. Her confidence blossomed, showcasing a competence that had previously felt elusive. She had not just returned to the status quo. She had embedded a new culture of openness into the very fabric of her work environment. By inviting vulnerability into their daily operations, the team thrived. One day, as she sat down with Melissa for their quarterly review, a shift was palpable in the room. "You've transformed our team dynamic, Mary," Melissa remarked, genuine admiration in her voice. "Your initiative has inspired a palpable cultural shift. It's impressive to see how far you've come." Mary felt a swell of pride. The recognition served as an affirmation of her conscious journey from personal turmoil to professional triumph. She had conquered the inner demons of doubt, and in doing so, she had laid a foundation for authenticity that could strengthen others too. "Thank you, Melissa," she said, her voice steady. "It was difficult, but stepping into the unknown proved to be more rewarding than I could have imagined. I finally feel comfortable owning my story. It's not just about vulnerability. It's about resilience, connection, and leading by truth." This journey had come full circle, from a mother overwhelmed by despair to a professional championing openness. Mary Johnson had found her voice. She had transformed not just her narrative, but had authored a pioneering chapter in her career. As she walked away from the meeting, a sense of fulfillment enveloped her. She had not only proven her capabilities, but had elevated her entire team, collectively striving for authenticity in their professional landscape. The path she had carved out would be traveled by many. She smiled, heart alight with confidence, as she stepped forward not just as a survivor but as a leader ready to pave the way for others. Now is the time to make a difference in your own life. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, because the stories we tell can inspire greatness. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your thoughts matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share, because true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting meaningful content.